820, Big 550, KTRS. Scott Goldberg is with us, ABC News correspondent. More importantly, though, his dad went to high school in U City.
Really?
So he's one of us, kind of. But he's from Kansas City. So he wants to claim St. Louis, but he really can't.
Our adopted son. How's that?
Scott Goldberg, good morning this morning. Welcome to KTRS here in St. Louis.
Yeah, good morning, guys. I spent a lot of time in St. Louis growing up, and, I was actually, it's hard for me to admit as a Kansas Citian, I was definitely pulling for the Cards in the World Series. I'm sorry about that.
Are we pulling for them in 1985?
Not 1985. It's funny you mentioned that year.
Yeah, funny.
But, it's a good healthy relationship we have.
Absolutely. 1985, the year they should have reversed the call at first base, as opposed to this year when they should have kept the call at second base.
Yeah, well, you have, what is it, 11 World Series championships now?
Yes, 11, I believe.
Yeah. You guys are doing okay.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Gun violence is in the news, Scott Goldberg, and some interesting stuff in a new study. Tell us about it.
Well, McGraw, this is a study that was published in the journal Pediatrics. You have researchers from Ohio State University and the Annenberg Public Policy Center at the University of Pennsylvania studying blockbusters over time, looking at the trends when it comes to violence. And they found that since 1950, overall, the amount of violence in movies has doubled. But specifically, when you look at movies rated PG-13, which have only been around since 1984, gun violence in those movies has tripled, and now they're saying that it is just as likely that you'll see gun violence, or actually more likely, than in an R-rated movie. That's how far PG-13 movies have evolved when you're talking about violence, and it's really interesting because PG-13 came about after a lot of parents were upset about the violence in the movie Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom back in 1984, which seems relatively tame by today's standards.
Wow, that's really interesting. Now, so are there any regulations on violence? Because I guess you can kill 800 million people, but you can't show a naked body.
Well, I mean that's the thing that they point out here. The researchers say sex and language are more likely to earn an R rating than violence is, and gun violence in particular. They say that in 1985, in a PG-13 movie, there was less than one shooting per hour. Now, on average, nearly 3 shootings per hour, which is at very least on par with movies that are rated R. But, officially, according to the Motion Picture Association of America, if a movie is rated PG-13, the depictions of violence are not generally realistic and extreme or persistent, whereas with an R-rated movie, they are intense or persistent. The researchers here say that doesn't really hold up anymore. They're saying that the PG-13 rating is no longer very helpful.
That's really interesting because you and I both live in a world where ratings and parsing words and words we can say and words with meaning and what is, we live in this world where they put us in a box and it's just ridiculous. Is there any talk about anybody taking a second look at some of these movie rankings?
Well, they don't necessarily call for a change in the way movies are rated here, besides saying that they think PG-13 is kind of worthless. They are concerned about what they call the weapons effect. These researchers say it's troubling knowing that other studies have linked depictions of gun violence in media to aggressive behavior, at least in the real world. The Motion Picture Association of America isn't really saying anything about this study, and they have said that ultimately it's up to parents to decide whether a movie is suitable for their families. And really, McGraw, when you think about it, this study looked at blockbusters, so it didn't look at every movie that's come out. It just looked at the most popular ones. In other words, the movies we are paying to go see. So violence sells.
Do they have a list of the most violent movies out there?
They didn't name the movies they saw as the most violent, but you look at some of the series that started as movies that were rated R, like Die Hard or The Terminator, and then the movies that came out, the sequels, were rated PG-13. So there's kind of been an evolution in the ratings going downward, where I think if you put them side by side, you're not going to find that the films are less violent today than they were when the first ones came out.
So movie makers are saying, look, we an R rating doesn't necessarily help at the box office. We want as many young teenagers going as possible. So if we put in more violence, less sex and words, then we'll be able to get a PG-13 rating, and we'll be able to entice the 13-year-olds to go.
Well, I think broadly speaking, when you have the PG-13 rating, you don't need, if you're a young kid or a young teen, you don't need a parent to go with you to buy a ticket. So, yeah, it's easier to get in. Are the kids more attracted to violence than they are, let's say, the sex or language? I don't know. But apparently, as a society, we have deemed, or we have at least let the movie slide to a place where the sex and the language are things that bother us more, at least when it comes to rating movies, than violence. And, it's the researchers say that this is a widespread problem, and you only have to look, as far as they're concerned, at some of the mass shootings and the horrible things we've heard about recently to back up what they're saying.
I also find it fascinating that you say, what'd you say, 3 deaths per hour now?
3 shootings per hour. 3 episodes of gun violence, yeah, on average.
Does it have there how many times a dog has been killed in a blockbuster?
They were just their standard here was looking at the firing of handheld guns with the intent to harm or kill a living being. So maybe dog violence was included in this.
Well, but
yeah.
what's amazing to me is they can kill humans all day long, and we don't think twice. No one has the audacity to kill a dog on TV or in a movie because the backlash will be so great, it's not worth it.
Well, and some of the pushback is that a lot of the violence that's included in this is what people might consider fantasy violence, either committed by superheroes or someone else, or Quentin Tarantino violence that's so over the top, although I don't think any of his movies are rated PG-13, but violence that's perhaps so over the top that it's just not considered realistic.
Right.
But, it's a good discussion to have. And, while I mentioned these researchers are concerned about some of the mass shooting events, if you look at violent crime overall, it is at a historic low. So it is a complicated debate if you're going to have it.
Great point. Scott Goldberg. We'll leave it there. ABC News correspondent. Scott, thanks for checking in. Have a good day.
Always a good time. Thanks, McGraw.
7:27 here, Big 550, KT.